Which I did call you back. If you want to talk for a few after the meeting or whatever. Sure. Yeah, I returned your call.
Yeah, no, I was on to the next things.
Okay, I'm gonna. There we go. Oh, I thought it was. All right, so back and forth. So I think we're up. Yeah, but you want to go back to the Zoom? Yes. Like, okay, whenever you're ready, Rich.
1 second. So I'd like to call to order the meeting of the Executive Committee of the IDA. And we're here today to talk about the terms of the MOU between the IAED and the IDA. And Heather, you sent a red line, which I don't have in front of me. Actually, let me pull my computer up if you give me just a second. And maybe we could just talk about, you said you made some small changes. You should review those.
Sure, you want to start with the IDA?
Do the IDA one.
And you can see the red line. I just changed the first whereas paragraph. I moved a sentence from the bottom to near the top of the paragraph. And then I added that, we're growing capacity for workforce development. I mean, that paragraph, I think, really just captures what IAED does. I changed the dates and
I have to apologize. For some reason, the county email, we have our very own version of Outlook. When you open documents, it takes out all of the red lines.
oh, cool.
So I have no idea what you do. It's a helpful thing.
You can see on page 2, I took the line out about filing the RPT 412s because while it doesn't say RPT 412, I think in the bullet before, that's essentially, we facilitate all the documents to county assessment. So it just seemed duplicative to me. I think minor editorial changes. I didn't even track changes where I removed the periods from all the bullets.
We missed the last
when you
one,
have
guys.
a bulleted list, you don't need to have a period. So
I think we can have a big argument about
major improvements.
semicolons.
Yeah.
Semicolons.
We could.
we have
Kurt
Oxford
could come
comments
in and
here and
outline this for me if you like.
And you change the number from 459 to 467.
Which is
and that
a 1.67% increase.
okay.
do we have a similar, like when we were doing the county task force, there was there's a sense of like what the next couple of years are going to be like baked into that MOU, but with IDA, we do the MOU every year. Is there like a similar, like what that trajectory looks like? Do you have that developed internally?
What we did internally is we put together our 5-year strategy, put together a proposed budget, a projected budget for 5 years with that. And then what we've done historically is we back out the county and the investment income, and the IDA fills the gap.
Mhm.
For many years, the IDA was like 98%
Yeah.
of TCID's funding.
Yeah.
So we've tried to sort of make it much more balanced, which I think it is.
Do you have that? Like, I feel like you gave us this really great like chart of like the various points of investment over time stacked on top of each other, showing the history and also like the next couple of years projected out.
I've never projected out on that graph.
Right, I guess so. Where did we get that?
Basically, we projected our budget, and I think IAED's budget overall is about somewhere between a 3 and 5% increase each year. Just accounting for cost of living, wages, staff. Nothing's really from this year for the next 5 years changing a whole lot. unless
So where did the 1.67% come from?
it was just the gap between county and
Okay.
investor. If it rounded out the rest of what we think our budget will be. We did keep the IDA number flat for probably 4 or 5 years. And then last year I increased it 2%. My recollection is the year before I had increased it 2%.
Okay.
Right. Is the investor number, is that based on pledges, or is that like your sort of like your best guess budget of like what
It's
your?
based on our 5-year goal was 2.1 million. We have not closed out our 5-year investment initiative yet. We're at about 80, I think we're 80% today, but we did budget next year 100% of reaching that goal.
So I'm fine with the 1.67%. That seems more than reasonable. That I just note that the county's baseline increase was 2%. So
yes, but recognize that our budget increased by more than 2% between last year.
Right. I'm saying
or
1.67
this year and next year. Yeah.
is a bargain.
Yeah.
So
Oh, thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it would be helpful to have just like in our records that like the chart that you produced for that other thing, and maybe like even just like stuff it in the agenda in case anybody's paying any attention at all, which I know probably most of us aren't. But it is helpful. Then like, if you have like, this is what we think the next 2 or 3 years are gonna look like. Then next year, when we're looking at this, we can be like, oh, look, it's exactly what we said last year.
Sure.
And that's just,
Yeah, I can do
I
that.
mean, if you already have it, like, we might as well include that, but I agree with Rich. I don't think that that's okay.
Does anybody have any comment on any of these changes in the red line?
I think, I mean, Heather already answered my question about why that was being stricken, and I think that makes sense. I mean, it's like, is there anything that's not in here that should be? Is there anything that you're doing, that sort of falls under the high level purview of IDA that like, we should think about including in here, or that we might wish we had later if something came up, or.
Oh, I've tried to every year. I mean, it's clear I read it. I made some minor edits. I try and think about if there's anything new, if there's anything that, we sort of need to add. I know in years past, we added some things as a result of changes to some of the IDA regulations. But no, like off the top of my head, I can't really think of anything that isn't in here. I will note that it used to say, number 2, IAED agrees to provide technical and administrative services to the IDA. Like at some point we added in all the bullets so that, folks could see that, there are things that we need to comply with.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, do you feel like there's like there's a certain amount of like other duties as assigned, or things that sort of like you do because somebody like asked a question, or like, whatever.
Yeah.
And I feel like, I mean, this is a lot of these things are sort of broad. It's like, Guttridge being a pain in the ass might fit under educate members on duty of the public authority,
That's
for
fair.
instance.
Yeah.
I'll put your name under there.
I'd like a photograph.
The work plan for IAD to this?
So I think it's been different in different years. It used to say, see attached work plan, but it was never attached when it went to contract phase. And, just as a result of hanging chads, I thought I might as well just say it's I changed the language and said it's referenced in IAD's work plan, the work that we do. So if anyone wants it, they get it. But I will tell you, when papers shuffle and contracts get signed, the attachments never go with it, like realistically. So I just wanted to sort of make it more consistent with actual practice.
Yeah. I think just, my more question is to say, if anyone on the outside is looking at this, I would love for them to have this as well, because this really provides a 6-page in-depth look at what really IAD is going to do for the next year. And because obviously this, in section 4, item 4, it talks about, reference economic development services provided for Tompkins County. So it's really a breadth of the entire Tompkins County, and this really delves into that.
Well, then that's where it also says IAD's 2024 work plan further outlines these services.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It Is the MOU, it's not on the website, is it?
No,
No, I,
don't post.
that's the one thing that the state doesn't require we post, I think.
And is that just because it's not required or is there any reason we wouldn't want?
I haven't thought of it.
We never thought about posting it. But, you know, it's in the
I'm not
minutes.
getting sunlight, it's
it-
like
and-
everywhere.
It appears in the minutes.
Oh, yeah, it's in our
and the
agenda. So
agenda
if anybody's
packet,
looking
yeah.
for it, they're gonna
Yeah.
find it.
And the work
Yeah,
plan.
hey,
and the
John,
five-year strategy.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. It's an MOU, which is a memorandum of understanding, so it's not a contractual obligation. It's basically a correspondence that lays out what is to be done.
Right.
Well, I'm certainly fine with these changes. Doc, Annie? Jeff?
I am fine with these changes. Yeah, I'm fine with the percentage increase.
I had one other question, which I mean, this might have been what you were calling me about earlier, but I think it might actually be helpful to break out the like how much of this payment is for these services and how much of this is sort of like the county's payment of like go forth and do good work. Like we're supporting economic development in our community by contributing to IAED. Even if it was at a very broad brush level. And I don't know if that's, I mean, it may not be practical to do that now, but you know, like, what is your sort of gut sense of if
That's
we were
what I
like,
was-
if I asked you to do these things as a contract and then other stuff as whatever, like, how would you break that up? And
Well, the majority of our budget is staff time. And we don't track who does what, when.
Yeah, that's what I was calling you about, because I thought about it and
And the administrative services,
they're gonna vary
yeah,
dramatically.
and the
depending on what
economic-
the Needs are every year, so trying to do a line out on it would, I think, entail a lot of timekeeping
Mhm.
that
Yeah, I
isn't
mean-
happening now.
I'm not sure that I was looking for that at that level of detail so much. It's just like, I mean, my gut says there's like an order of magnitude number that we could come to. And then, you know, because I mean, I feel like this, like to some extent, like I see this being relevant in a couple of different ways. One is like, we're having this conversation at the county where like I was there as like, I guess, a representative by IDA sort of in that working group, or maybe just as like a business person in the community. I'm not entirely sure why I was in that room, but it was mostly a bunch of legislators. And there was this conversation about like, well, is it a third, or is it like, you know, whatever. And we couldn't actually even quite get the county there on paying a third of the sort of economic development services that we all think are like valuable. It was like, well, in 3 years, we'll be at a third of today's number was like what we ended up with. And that felt sort of frustrating. And it's like, well, okay, that means that IDA is backfilling from actually our much more limited budget.
Yeah, that's
You
a
know,
different issue though.
And so it's like,
And in
like,
defense of the county, there was a pretty substantial commitment made beyond what we had been doing in the past.
Yeah.
oh, yeah. Well, I know, and I was
Yeah.
in all those
But
conversations.
that
whatever.
seems very different from this contract. Do we want to try to do a line out on it? And I don't want to do that.
well, and the administrative services or the economic development services, you know, we're not identifying which specific services or anything like that. Like, it's just sort of all lumped into one
Right.
in our budget and staff time.
And I think that's appropriate. I mean, I feel like, you know, it's like the sort of like the end of that conversation was sort of like, well, we're not gonna get really specific about what IAED does. We just sort of say, go forth and do good work and here's some money. And that was like how, and that's probably really how it should be, right? It's like, you're not the government on purpose. The government has to like function in a sort of a more rigorous and like whatever way, like, and you know, I might be like, I'm not even sure how to address that issue specifically. It just feels like it's like, it could be relevant in another 3 years when the next round of the county MOU comes up. You know, and or in future conversations.
Well, let me ask-
like how we're breaking down sort of this like
Okay.
generalized commitment to economic development from different buckets of money that are available.
Okay. Well, let me ask Jeff or Doc or Annie, what do you think? Is this a useful endeavor at this point?
I would say, the only thing I felt like we could break out separately is, because as part of the, budget, there's a $75,000 number that's gonna be for economic study, I believe it is.
Mhm.
So that would be the only thing, but to your point, well, what Rich said, but John, it feels like that would be very difficult for them to try and track it, and especially when you think about how we budget or how the, IAD budget comes in, is you've got the employer investment, and you've got the county, and as Heather says, then the IDA fills in the gap. So like, how do you allocate costs associated with that when we're filling in the gap?
Right.
Duxon, what do you think? You have strong feelings?
Yeah.
Annie, what do you think?
I do like, as far as trying to like parse out, like, some activities, what they're already in there, but to try and put a dollar figure with that, can be tricky. So I mean, I would like to talk about it some more, but I'm not hearing a compelling reason, as far as you're saying, like, that if you're putting a pot of money somewhere, then it has to be used for that.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, good
I'm
point.
I think just keep talking about it and brainstorm. I don't have any great idea, but just keep talking about it, see if we can come up with something.
Okay, maybe that's a project for 2024. That we look at that further.
Mhm.
Okay,
I mean, I think generally, like, if we had done this in October, that would have been great. Let's try to do that next year.
yes,
It
yeah.
need not be complicated.
I just went and got our Christmas tree. I have a little bit of needle.
I'm gonna leave it.
Granted yet, Tim?
But yeah, no, I got it in the tree stand and ran down the hill.
This is why you just call me back.
Oh, yeah. I was flying out in the woods.
I will just note on the Development Corporation, I did delete some of the bullets because I think someone at some point cut and pasted from IDA to TCDC, and the TCDC doesn't do those
When you
things.
really look at it, yeah.
So I
Okay.
just wanted to clean it up.
Well, let me ask let's go to the Development Corporation side. Is there any language there that anybody is concerned about?
I don't know about these changes to the first paragraph. I mean, that's what I say.
I changed the address. Yeah, that didn't get done.
You missed that last year. Yeah.
I
Okay,
think the Development Corporation is fine. I mean, so it's like it might not be a terrible idea to, like, so you've got this, like, there's an independent contract relationship, but there isn't actually any payment in here, and it doesn't explicitly say that this is effectively covered by this. And I don't know if you wanted to put something into that effect.
I think there was discussion at one point, and there was some reason. I know that the IDA funds has been the primary funder for many years, because the Development Corporation doesn't do the breadth of bond work that they used to with Cornell. And so they never have the fund balance, but also the Development Corporation is much more flexible in what it can use its funding for. So there was a determination at one point that IDA would fund IAED because they're sort of limited in what the IDA funds can be used for. And I vaguely remember there was a conversation about referencing both MOUs, and there was a reason why they weren't both referenced. And I don't remember what it was.
but maybe it does make sense to just have a sentence in there that says,
Either there's no payment, or, these services are covered under the fee charged to IDA,
Yeah,
or
and
something.
maybe we don't want to say that the IDA is buying lunch for the Development Corporation. And so we leave it vague. Maybe that's,
Like, there's,
Yeah, because the Development Corporation MOU doesn't say that we're providing economic development services for Tompkins County.
Right.
It just says that we're providing administrative services for the Development Corporation.
right. I mean, you could even just put in a sentence, it's like these services are provided at no charge. Whole thing.
well, but that's, first year of law school, you have this whole issue of consideration. I guess I'd ask our
$1.
council.
$1.
Should we have some indication that there is consideration for the services provided?
Yeah, that's a very good point. I agree with that. And you're like you said, it's law school 101 that you have to have consideration in a contract. So you can make it $1 or whatever you want.
But is this a contract? I think you said it's not a contract.
No,
It's an.
no, that's the work plan.
MOU, pardon me.
Oh, MOU, it sure looks like a contract. It's gonna get signed. And I'll just put on the record that I kind of got confused at law school after that point, so I'm not reliable on anything else. I remember consideration.
You just made my day.
I can add, if you want me to add, I can add a number 5.
Yeah, why don't we just do the vague language saying $1 and other good and valuable consideration. It is mutually agreed. We can do it in 3, I think.
Oh, okay. I can do that.
Russ has that as like an auto text on his computer if you want.
Anything else on the development agreement? Okay. And then we're set to consider this on January 10th.
Yes.
And we had talked about at the meeting, that's not going to cause any difficulty for the IDA or the.
No,
Okay,
should be fine.
so good. Well, I'm glad we had a chance to talk about it. Nothing earth shattering here, but this is good. It's probably better practice. Anything else? Do we want to just continue meeting for the full hour or should we call it a day?
You gotta get back to doing.
I have stuff to do apparently. All right, motion to adjourn? Moved, seconded, good. All in favor? We're adjourned.
Thanks.
Thanks,
And
everybody.
if we don't speak, everyone happy holidays, please.
Likewise, yes.
Enjoy your family. Thank you.